Welcome to Green Bay Packaging, Arkansas Craft Division. This presentation presents an overview of the safety rules and policies at the Arkansas Craft Division facility and is not considered comprehensive training. All contractors and contractor employees must be trained on and understand all the requirements of our safety policy manual before beginning any work at the Arkansas Craft Division. The contractor's gate is only open during the annual outage or during special projects. At all other times, contractors must sign in with a guard when entering and leaving the mill. Before bringing a vehicle into the mill, a vehicle pass signed by a supervisor must be obtained. The speed limit within the mill is 15 miles per hour. Please observe all traffic signs and parking regulations. Cross railroad tracks at regular roadways only, after taking time to stop, look, and listen. Do not pass under, over, or between rail cars at the facility. Vehicular and heavy equipment traffic is constant throughout the facility. Pedestrians must travel in designated walkways and cross roadways at designated crossings. As you travel in and out of the plant, take regular roadways and walkways. Do not take shortcuts or go through posted areas such as recycled fiber, shipping, or motor control centers. If you must travel through the recycle area, stay in the yellow marked lanes. The elevator located in recovery is for personnel use only. Powered industrial truck traffic is heavy in the recycled fiber and shipping areas. Do not enter these areas unless authorized to do so. Inform drivers if you'll be working in these areas. Listen and watch for truck traffic. Use caution when rounding corners and walking through doorways. Golf carts, mules, and similar transportation must be equipped with operable front and rear lights, horn, brakes, and brake lights, and must be approved by the maintenance superintendent or designee. Contractor parking areas are the gravel area north of the chip scale gate and by the ball field park. Parking is not permitted south of the shop unless materials are being loaded or unloaded. Parking is not permitted north of the lunchroom unless you're working in the immediate area or loading or unloading materials. Hard hats, approved eye protection, and NCC 41 1991 safety shoes are mandatory in the mill. Tinted or dark glasses will not be worn inside buildings except when used for welding. Contact lenses are not permitted in the mill. Hearing protection must be worn in areas where noise levels exceed 80 decibels. Gloves must be worn by all personnel when handling rough, sharp-edged, abrasive material or where work subjects the hands to lacerations, punctures, burns, or bruises. Shirts with at least 4-inch sleeves that cover the entire midsection of the body are required. Full-length trousers without excessive length and flare are required. Loose-fitting clothing that can become tangled in moving equipment must not be worn. Hair restraint must be worn if the hair is shoulder length or longer. Jewelry, including watches, rings, earrings, necklaces, and bracelets, is not to be worn in mill areas. The only safe source of drinking water is bottled water or a drinking fountain. Other sources should not be used. Weapons, alcohol, fighting, gambling, or horseplay are not permitted, nor will they be tolerated on company premises. Possession or use of drugs other than for medical reasons is strictly forbidden. Smoking is allowed in designated areas only. Check with the AKD supervisor for these areas. Smokeless tobacco must have a container with a lid. Do not spit anywhere except in the container, and keep the container with you at all times. Cell phones may be used only by supervisors and only for company business. Material storage areas are to be assigned by the supervisor in charge of the project. Everyone is expected to keep their equipment and work area clean at all times. Contractors are not allowed to dispose of any hazardous waste at AKD. This includes wastes that explode at low temperature, are corrosive, or toxic. When discarding boards, always remove protruding nails or bend them down. Flammable liquids stored inside a building must be in an approved flammable liquid storage cabinet. Be familiar with the location of eye wash stations, safety showers, and other emergency safety equipment located in your work area. If you use a fire extinguisher, bring it to the maintenance shop to be recharged and pick up a loaner until it's ready. Protective blinds must be used around welders to prevent other employees from receiving arc burns. If for any reason it's necessary to remove handrails, U-drain covers, etc., make sure that a temporary means of protection is provided. Contractors are responsible for having their own first aid supplies and administering minor first aid to their contractor employees. However, if you need assistance, dial 9111 to summon help. All injuries, regardless of severity, must be reported to your supervisor. All first aid injuries require a written report to be turned into the guard, nurse, or safety office. To report any emergency, dial 9111 to notify the guard, who is the main communications coordinator in the mill. Provide your name and telephone extension number, the nature of the emergency, such as fire, spill, injury, or bomb threat, the location and details of the emergency situation. There are 7 different types of alarms at the Arkansas Craft Division. These include emergency response, severe weather, hydrogen sulfide, natural gas leak, fire systems alarms, the recovery boiler alarm, and the evacuation alarm. Hydrogen sulfide is generated in the pulping processes at Arkansas Craft Division. Hydrogen sulfide is a colorless, heavier-than-air gas that has a rotten egg odor in low concentrations. In high concentrations, it deadens the sense of smell and is therefore odorless. Hydrogen sulfide monitors are located throughout the mill and have a red warning light at 10 parts per million and an audible alarm at 20 parts per million. Leave the area if the alarm sounds and notify your supervisor. If a problem develops with the boiler horn will sound. When the boiler alarm sounds, all outside contractors and visitors should immediately leave the area via a safe route. Contractors should report to the evacuation area. Do not use an elevator. If a natural gas leak is detected, the mill alarm will sound 4 30-second blasts. Contractors should evacuate to the designated evacuation area. Primary evacuation assembly points are the parking lot by the scale gate for the pulp mill, recovery, and wood yard. The main office parking lot for the paper machine, shipping, main office, and the technical building. The wet truck turnaround for recycled fiber. And the oil storage tank levee for the maintenance shop. Secondary evacuation assembly points are east by Rainy Well for the pulp mill, recovery, woodyard, and maintenance shop, and the clarifier pond area for the paper mill, shipping, main office, recycled fiber, and the technical building. Fire codes have been established for all mill areas. The fire code list is posted throughout the mill. You'll also be provided with a pocket-sized list that you can refer to if the fire alarm is sounded. Designated severe weather shelters are marked with signs. These areas include ground floor restrooms, restrooms in the maintenance shop, the main office conference room, and the DCS control office restrooms. If you're in the pulp mill, use the stairs and evacuate to the technical building or the DCS restroom. If you don't have time to leave the pulp mill, remain in the control room. If you cannot reach your assigned assembly point, proceed to the nearest accessible assembly point and report the person in charge. Stay with this group throughout the duration of the evacuation. Only properly trained and authorized personnel can drive and operate mobile equipment and cranes. Requirements for operating such equipment can be found in the AKD Mobile Equipment Policy. Never work or walk under a suspended load. Contractors must receive training before being allowed to use mill man lifts. All cylinders of compressed gas are supplied by AKD. Bottles must be stored upright and secured at all times. Bottles must be transported with caps on. Acetylene cutting gauges must be in good working condition. Spark arresters must be placed at the gauges and by the torch. When empty or at job completion, bottles must be returned to the storage rack behind the storeroom and stored properly. Air hose pressure must be regulated, or the pressure must be relieved below 30 psi. Inspect hoses for damaged loose clamps. Use safety clips. Never use compressed air against your body or the clothes of another person. Do not use mill air for human-supplied air. Use hoses specifically designed for high pressure. Contractors must have a valid inspection program, and all tools, including extension cords, must be identifiable to the contractor by either color code, engraving, or other marking. Inspect all tools before use. Damaged tools must be repaired or replaced. Lost or missing tools must be reported to security or personnel. Ground fault circuit interrupters must be on all extension cords and electrical hand tools. All guards must be in place. If a guard is removed for a specific job, replace it after the job is complete. Contractors are not permitted to use AKD equipment or tools without permission from AKD personnel. Extension cords and welding leads must not be run through doors or holes in walls. Keep cords off the floor to eliminate slip and trip hazards. Portable generators shall not be connected to any AKD electrical device or circuit without prior approval of AKD electrical superintendent or designee. Only ladders and scaffolds that meet OSHA requirements and are in good condition will be used. Only fiberglass ladders are to be used around electrical energy sources. Extension ladders must be placed at a 4-to-1 ratio at the base. Extension ladders must extend 3 feet above the landing and be tied off to prevent slippage. Scaffolding must be erected and inspected by qualified and competent persons. The working platform for scaffolding must be covered. If the scaffold is over 10 feet high, those working from the scaffold must use a fall arrest system. If scaffolding is over 20 feet high, the scaffold must be tied off. A ladder must be used to get on and off scaffolding. Any unknown insulation material is to be treated as asbestos-containing material. All known asbestos-containing material is marked with purple paint or purple signs with white lettering, asbestos. If you suspect material is asbestos, do not handle it or disturb it. Contact AKD personnel. Contractors must be accompanied by authorized personnel to enter an electric control center. Smoking, tobacco, food, and drink are prohibited in electric control centers. Whenever work on any equipment or system cannot be conducted safely while the source of power is energized, that source must be locked out. This applies to electrical, pneumatic, steam, hydraulic, or any other source. Only authorized Arkansas Craft Division personnel are allowed to de-energize and perform the initial lockout before equipment is serviced. Arc flash protection and testing for energy is a part of lockout for electrical energy sources when an electric cabinet must be opened. AKD personnel will secure the equipment and verify a successful lockout. Only then can contractor employees place their lockout on the energy source or on the group lockout device. The contractor has the right and responsibility to use radio or go to the piece of equipment and verify that the equipment will not start. Personal locks must have only one key. Personal locks must have the name of the owner, the company name, and a danger tag on the lock or a tag attached to the lock. The name of the owner must be legible at all times. Silver master locks are not to be used for lockout. Red Master brand locks are used by AKD personnel and are not to be used by contractors. Colored locks on the lock ring are system locks used by AKD employees to isolate individual pieces of equipment. Black locks are department locks used by AKD during group lockout. When a contractor gets ready to lock out on an AKD lock ring, the first step is to fill out the tag on their personal lock. Then, the contractor will review the isolation list that is on the lock ring, checking to ensure that the date and time is correct, and that all equipment listed on the isolation list has been initialed as being complete. Make sure the isolation list has 3 signatures, and that the lock color and lock numbers are listed on the isolation list. The contractor will then place their personal lock on the lock ring and keep the key. Then it's safe to begin work. When work is complete, each contractor will remove their lock and tag from the lock ring. No one other than the individual that placed the lock on the lockout device may remove the lock. Removal of a personal lock by anyone other than the person that placed the lock may result in disciplinary action. A properly filled out isolation list must be posted at the AKD lock ring and at each satellite lock box. Never place a personal lock on lock ring or lock box until the lockout isolation list is complete and posted and the department lock is applied. To use the satellite lock box, the contractor supervisor will review the isolation list on the lock ring to make sure all information is complete. Then place their lock tag on the lock ring. The contractor supervisor will place the key to this lock in the satellite lock box. Place a second lock in the center hole of the lock box and keep this key with him. A copy of the isolation list will also be attached to the satellite lock box. Contractor employees will review the isolation list and place their lock on the lock box. When work is complete, each contractor will remove his own lock. The last one to remove their lock from the lock box will be the contractor supervisor. He'll remove his lock and the isolation list. Then retrieve his key from the lock box and remove his lock from lock ring. Personal fall protection is required when working on elevated surfaces 4 feet high or more and within 6 feet of the edge of an opening without a protective barrier. Employees working above dangerous equipment, regardless of height, must wear fall protection if protective barriers or guards are not provided. Personal fall protection includes a full body harness with double shock absorbent type lanyards for a 100% tie-off. The anchor point for fall protection must hold at least 5,000 pounds. Employees required to use fall protection must be trained in the use, inspection, and maintenance of the equipment used. A confined space is defined as an area which has adequate size and configuration for employee entry, has limited means of access or egress, and is not designed for continuous employee occupancy. A permit-required confined space has the potential for hazards related to atmospheric conditions, toxic, flammable, asphyxiating, engulfment, configuration, or any other recognized serious hazard. At Arkansas Craft Division, all confined spaces require a permit for entry. No one other than the authorized AKD employee is allowed to prepare and isolate a confined space for entry. AKD personnel will perform atmospheric testing prior to entry. The contractor must provide continuous monitoring of the space while entrants are in the space. An authorized AKD representative will obtain and post a confined space entry permit after all lockout and atmospheric testing has been completed. The permit must remain at the point of entry until entry is no longer required. Entrants have the right to inspect equipment to ensure that it's properly locked out before beginning work. Entrants must place their personal lock on the lockout device before they enter the space and remove their personal lock when they're finished working in the space. No individual shall enter any confined space without an attendant posted at the entry point. Entrants must ensure their name and time of entry and exit is on the entry list. Entrants must wear a harness and a retrieval line when entering a confined space unless they create a hazard to the entrant. An individual is considered to have entered the confined space when any part of the individual's body breaks the plane of the confined space opening. Entrants must be trained and knowledgeable in the hazards they may face. They must be able to recognize signs or symptoms of exposure. They must know how to use any needed equipment. They must communicate with the attendants as necessary. Alert the attendant when a warning symptom or other hazardous conditions arise, and exit as quickly as possible when ordered. Authorized entrants shall exit the confined space unless it's physically impossible to do so without assistance when the attendant orders evacuation. An atmospheric monitor alarm is activated, or if the authorized entrants perceive that they're in danger. The contractor must supply a qualified attendant who will continuously monitor the space for the duration of the permit. The attendant must be trained in and familiar with the hazards of confined space, know how to summon assistance, prevent unauthorized entry, and perform non-entry rescues. They must not perform other duties that interfere with their primary duty to monitor and protect the safety of authorized entrants. Attendants must wear a green vest while serving as an attendant. Contractors shall supply their employees equipment as required by the job, including gas monitors, safety lines and harnesses, and other PPE. All contractors must provide their employees in-depth training on the AKD confined space policy and provide proof of training and understanding of the requirements. A hot work permit is required for any work that contributes a direct source of ignition that can result in a flame or spark being generated. The permit must be completed by authorized AKD personnel. Contractors are responsible for furnishing a trained fire watch. The fire watch must have and know how to use firefighting equipment. The fire watch must remain in the area 1 hour after the completion of work. Then the contractor must notify their production supervisor to monitor the area for an additional 3 hours. When hot work is done, the completed hot work permit must be turned into the safety office. Fire hoses used for fire watch must be turned off, drained, and returned to the rack at the completion of the fire watch. Do not use the fire hose stations to clean up with. An excavation permit is required for any man-made cut, cavity, trench, or depression in the Earth's surface formed by earth removal. Excavations over 4 feet deep are considered confined spaces. Only authorized AKD employees can issue an excavation permit. Processes and equipment at Arkansas Craft Division may pose hazards to personnel that aren't properly trained to work around them. Contractor employees are not allowed in areas where they're not trained and are not authorized to enter. Be aware of the signs, labels, and markings in the mill that warn of potential hazards. All containers of chemicals and hazardous substances must be labeled that indicate the hazards and precautions to be taken if you're required to handle or will be exposed to the substances. This includes tanks, vessels, cans, and totes. Material Safety Data Sheets, MSDS, are available upon request for any chemical found in the facility. Contractors must have prior approval to bring chemicals into the mill and must provide an MSDS for those chemicals. Follow MSDS requirements for proper PPE when working with any chemical. Observe all warnings and report any spills to your supervisor. This completes your safety orientation overview. Our safety commitment is based on a genuine concern for all of our contractors, employees, and visitors. We believe that by giving you the information you need and by working together, we'll achieve our goal of 0 incidents.